We are joined by Nicholas Williams, who is a former NATO official. Thank you very much for joining us here on In Focus. Now, with Trump freezing US aid to Ukraine, how much pressure does that put on Europe to fill that gap? And is Europe capable?
No, it's not capable. It has to be recalled that Europe and the United States, until the advent of President Trump, were together. They were pursuing a common aim of supporting Ukraine, and they complemented each other. And particularly the United States urged, not that they needed urging, the Europeans to impose sanctions and so on. And so this was a joint endeavor. Now, if with a joint endeavor, a partner suddenly withdraws and changes direction, then the other partner, the Europe, actually can't do what the other is doing. And so, yes, as your previous interlocutor mentioned, and Europe is doing something, but not specifically immediately for Ukraine, but to try to put together an autonomous defense capability in case United States withdraws even more from Europe.
And I'm getting the view of the last week or so that Britain's role has been greatly amplified, perhaps for the first time since the Blair government. Britain is playing a major role on the world stage. Do you think Britain's post-Brexit place in Europe has increased in the last few weeks?
I'm not sure. Personally, I doubt it. I think it's the almost the panic of the British system faced with the collapse of the assumption that they've had of American support and American partnership, an assumption that's held good since the Second World War. And I think the British effort, in effect, is not to support Ukraine, but that's part of it. It's to try to persuade the Trump administration that Europe is serious about what he wants to be done with European defense. So it's not the world stage that the British are trying to influence. It's the Americans. And this is the traditional British idea, bridge between Europe and America.
When it comes to Germany, of course, Germany is going through lots of changes at the moment with the new government about to come in. They've decided to get rid of the debt brake and boost their military spending. Is this quite a big shift for Germany?
Well, it heralds a big shift. Merz, the next chancellor, has signaled that the United States is not as reliable as it was, and also signaled that they need to take action in terms of moving towards a more European defense. But he wants, equally as the British, not to destabilize the transatlantic link. So it's a hesitant step. But the problem is, all this is input oriented. All this defense thing is input oriented. What is the purpose of European defense and what is the structure? No one has actually defined that.
Yes, I mean, Macron has called for a sovereign Europe capable of defending itself. Are we looking at a European army?
Well, no, because the problem is NATO has the monopoly of multinational military capability. Unless NATO is reformed, then it actually crowds out any possibility of a European army. If the EU or the Europeans with the UK want to reform NATO, they can do it. But all militaries in NATO have their primary function as defense of the NATO area. And that's run by an American general. So while they're talking about autonomy, they're actually subservient to the United States in the form of NATO.
And you're a former NATO official. Without the United States, is NATO dead?
Without the United States, NATO is dead in a sense because it wouldn't be as it were. But the structures of NATO, which make NATO competent and capable, the US only pays 16% of that running cost. If the US extracted itself, I think, and it won't do because it has so much power, but if the US extracted itself, it is possible that the structure could be preserved for a purely European context. I know it's technical, but the devil is in the detail, and the Europeans haven't actually addressed this detail yet.
Now we have the coalition of the willing. We're yet to know who's going to be a part of the coalition of the willing, apart from Britain and France and probably Germany. Do you think this could cause problems in the EU? Countries like Hungary perhaps being sidelined. Is this going to be a problem for European unity?
Not specifically, not greatly. You notice Hungary and now Slovakia. Yes, it differs from their. They differ from European policy towards Russia and towards Ukraine, but they never hold it up because they depend too much on European Union finance. So no, it won't be a problem. But anyway, this defense structure is non-existent, barely existent, I should say. And so any coalition of the willing has to be done outside the EU because the structures of the EU are feeble in terms of defense.
Okay. And do you think there's any chance that Europe, without the United States, could go alone and be its own security power?
Yes, there's no doubt about that. It's just whether they have the will and whether they want to. At the moment, the UK, even if it's outside the EU, it believes that it has a primary role in defending Europe. The UK, Germany, and others want to preserve the transatlantic alliance. They want to rebalance it, but not exclude the United States because Russia has nuclear weapons in abundance, and only the United States can effectively deter Russia. So the Europeans are desperate not to destroy the transatlantic link.
Do you think there's any chance that Europe might start acquiring more nuclear weapons, and that we start perhaps, I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but start some kind of new nuclear arms race with Europe trying to defend itself?
I don't think so. The French, or Macron in his speech a few days ago, offered, as he's offered before, to enter into discussions about uh, extending the French nuclear power of nuclear force to embrace EU or Europe. And it is possible that the UK could enter into these discussions. But there's a profound hesitation in Europe about adding to the proliferation of nuclear weapons in the world. They hold by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which limits nuclear weapons to certain countries.
Well, that's a positive note to end on. Thank you very much, Nicholas Williams, a former NATO official. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News.